when can you compromise and when can't you? I imagine that I am a congressman and I want legislation to decouple the American economy from the economy of the People's Republic of China. I want to bring American manufacturing back to the United States. And Congress can play a role by making laws that make it easy or difficult for American companies to produce their goods in Chinese factories. Now, we're assuming this. But I alone am not going to be able to make this happen. So I have to gather a coalition of other congressmen, including some in the congressional leadership of my party, and maybe in the other party as well, so that my idea can be made into something more than talk. How am I going to do this? Well, I, in my example, am a conservative Republican, much in the way that Mr. Tenorio is. Makes it easier for me to role play it that way. I need the help of people who don't care much about this issue. Now, some people want to increase the kind of immigration that we've had across our borders, particularly our southern border. They would like to see more unskilled people, relatively unskilled, come in to fill agricultural jobs and then send their money home and then go home themselves. I am personally against that. Am I willing to compromise? And in return for them voting yes on decoupling our economy from China, am I willing to vote yes on loosening controls at the border to allow more unskilled farm laborers into the country, especially at harvest time? Well, that would be a tempting thought, but I am not willing to do that. My own beliefs about immigration are about as strong as they are as regards decoupling the economy. I tend to believe that the legal immigration system should be reformed, but that illegal immigration is illegal and it should be enforced. You should try to stop lawbreakers. So I am not willing to make that compromise because, right or wrong, my own beliefs as a congressman say that that would be a compromise with my own core values, with my own integrity. Now, I could be the most progressive liberal Democrat, and I would have the same problem. Would I be willing to compromise my progressive ideas on, I'm trying to think of an issue, on government health care? Would I be willing to compromise with limits on that government health care that would be an impediment to setting up government single-payer system, which is what I personally believe in as a liberal Democrat now? Would I be willing to compromise and make a vote that might limit the government's ability to establish a federal health care system for every American in all ways, in return for a Republican's vote on something that I don't care that much about? For example, I don't know, gendered pronouns. Insisting that athletes that are born male do not compete in female athletics. Well, as a progressive Democrat in this example, I kind of like the idea of transgendered rights, but I am more interested in establishing a federal health care system. So in return for Republicans supporting me on allowing people who have changed their genders to reflect their inner selves to compete in whatever sport they identify with, am I willing to limit the power of government in healthcare? If I am a truly progressive Democrat, I'm probably not. It violates two core principles. Can you say that the ends justify the means? Can you do wrong in order to achieve right? That's what every wheeling and dealing congressman has to consider. So, in order to get a coalition, I am willing to compromise in certain ways, in ways that don't matter that much to me. If I have a congressman who wants to change the name or require that Native American names not be used in American sports teams, am I willing to compromise on that? Well, it goes against my grain, but it's less important than decoupling the economy from China. Am I willing to establish some kind of limit on the Second Amendment? No, I'm not. That would violate a core principle. I guess what I'm going on and on about, probably in a dull and boring way, and I'm sorry, I am, is that every congressman, once they arrive, realize that the only way they're going to get work done, the only way they're going to get things done, is A, with the help of their leadership, and B, by wheeling and dealing. And at that point, we're down to our lonesome. Are we willing to compromise little things for the big picture? Or is everything a big picture? In which case, you'll become an omega, an outcast. You'll be speaking your mind, but you won't be getting much done. On the other hand, if you are willing to compromise little things, you can get a lot done. The question that can only be answered by each of us in that position is, what's a little thing? Is there any such thing as a small bit of your integrity? Is there any such thing as something that is minorly important but not majorly important? If there is, you can wheel and deal. If there isn't, you're stuck as a prisoner of and an archon of your principles. So this is something that all congressmen have to deal with. As they master men, they have to master themselves. And each and every one of them, at some point, has to decide, what do I really stand for? Do I just stand for success, for getting my name on legislation, for getting it done, for being a wheeler-dealer? Do I define myself by my ability to walk across the aisle and make a deal? Or am I a representative of my ideals, of my philosophy? Am I going to serve those ideals and that philosophy come what may? Because I genuinely believe that my philosophy, whether it's progressivism or conservatism, libertarianism or moderation, whatever I believe in, I believe is for the best. And if I don't advocate what I believe is true, who the heck will? So am I a wheeler-dealer or am I standing on principle? That's as important as, do I represent me? They elected me to be their representative, or do I have to check in every time and do polling to see what the people in my district really want me to do? Who am I as a representative? That's important. So getting into the Congress, understanding what it's like, is in some ways much more complicated than understanding something like the presidency or what we'll study later, the judiciary. Because the Congress is all about the group, how the individual intersects with the group, how the individual interacts with the group. Does the individual go along to get along in every way? In which case they're a jellyfish, but they're very useful and they're going to get very popular. Or are they a rock, unbreaking, unbending, but fragile, able to be shattered? Or are they a little of both, which in practical terms usually tend to make the most successful politicians? I don't know if I could do it, which is why I'm a teacher, not a politician. But some of you may be interested in politics. I still have an interest in politics. But I know enough about myself to know that I'm probably more of a rock, which means that I would not be the most effective wheeler-dealer. I'm more come to represent a point of view and less to represent your point of view, which is why I will probably never get elected to anything. So I've gone on and on about all of this because I do think it's important that you understand that, oh God, I hate saying this, politicians are people too. Congressmen are people too. So are senators. And like any other person, they have to figure out this crazy world of ours. It's complicated. Politics, the structures of Congress are extremely complicated. There are unwritten rules. For example, senators can't call one another liars. They can find a way around that L word, but senators have this collegial attitude, and they are supposed to always respect personally other senators, even if the other senator is absolutely lying. You can't say, "Hey, Bob, you're a liar." No, it can't do that. Violates the rules. And if you do that, the group will come and get you. You all know what ostracism is. At least I assume you do, being middle schoolers. But I'm going to explain it in historical terms, because this is what can happen to you if you violate the rules. Ostracism comes from the world's first true democracy in ancient Athens about 2,500 years ago. Every natural-born male Athenian was a citizen and personally took part in government. One of the things that they did every year is they'd shatter an amphora vase, big clay vase, and there'd be these shards. And every male citizen would get a pot shard from this vase. And they'd write the name of the person they liked the least on it. And these are called ostracons, these broken bits of pottery. And the ostracons are put into a jar, and then the names are pulled out and they're tallied. And whichever name gets the most votes gets kicked out of Athens, ostracized. You can't live in Athens. You got to leave Athens very quickly. Any Athenian that provides food or fire to you is going to be a criminal themselves. You are cast out. You have to live in foreign lands as an exile. You're never allowed to come back to Athens. You are ostracized. And since that time, to be ostracized from the ostracon, since that time, here, don't rub up against your board. Since that time, anyone who is cast out of the group as a punishment, or shunned, that's another word for it, shunned, knows how horrible that can be. You may say, the opinions of people, they don't matter to me. Most of us, oh yeah, they matter a lot. And getting kicked out of your home group, being forced to live as a stranger in a strange land, as a foreigner, as a person from another town, that's a serious thing. And in the ancient world, it was basically it could be a death sentence. So if you violate the rules, if you don't learn the rules of group dynamic, you will become an omega. You will be ostracized. You'll have the legitimate letter of the law privileges that all congressmen have, but you won't have any power beyond your power to be a voice crying out in the wilderness. In order to function as a legislator in either party, you've got to learn how to go along to get along, to function within the group dynamics, to master men, both your voters, the systems within Congress, and your own self. Next time, how the legislature fits into the overall government.